The laughter hit me first, sharp and cruel, cutting through the murmur of conversation in my grandmother's dining room. My cousin Vanessa threw her head back, her perfectly straightened hair catching the afternoon light, and laughed like I'd just told the funniest joke she'd ever heard. Wait, she gasped, wiping tears from her eyes. You got rejected? For a business loan? By Community First Bank? She turned to the rest of my family gathered for Sunday dinner, her voice carrying that particular pitch that demands attention. Guys, you have to hear this. Marcus got rejected for a loan at the bank where his dad worked for 30 years before he died. They literally turned him down. 20 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. My Aunt Beatrice set down her fork with a delicate clink. My Uncle Thomas raised his eyebrows. My grandmother, seated at the head of the table in the wheelchair she'd needed since her stroke, looked at me with something between pity and disappointment. I kept my face neutral. Calm. I'd practiced this expression in the mirror for 3 weeks, ever since I'd found out what Vanessa had been doing behind my back. Since I discovered that the loan rejection wasn't random bad luck but deliberate sabotage. It's true, I said evenly, meeting Vanessa's eyes. My voice didn't shake. My hands, folded on the table, didn't tremble. I was rejected. Vanessa's smile widened. She was enjoying this, savoring it like expensive wine. I just don't understand how that happens. I mean, didn't your father practically build that bank? Didn't he work there for, 30 years? You'd think they'd at least give you the loan out of respect for his memory. She paused, letting the words sink in. Unless there's something you're not telling us. Something about your finances? Your credit? The implication hung in the air. My younger brother, Anthony, shifted uncomfortably beside me. My mother, who'd been setting out dessert in the kitchen, appeared in the doorway, her expression tight. Vanessa, she said quietly. That's enough. But Vanessa wasn't finished. She never was. I'm just saying, it's interesting. Especially since I got approved for my expansion loan last month. Same bank. No problems at all. In fact, they couldn't have been more helpful. She glanced around the table, making sure everyone was listening. The loan officer, what was his name? Mr. Patterson, he said. My application was one of the strongest he'd seen all year. Mr. Patterson. The same loan officer who'd rejected my application. The same man who'd sat across from me 3 months ago and told me, with what seemed like genuine regret, that my business plan didn't meet their current lending criteria. The same man who'd been receiving monthly payments from Vanessa for the past 6 months to ensure my loan would never be approved. I knew all of this because I'd spent the last 3 weeks investigating, documenting, building my case with the precision of someone who'd learned to be thorough, to be patient, to wait for exactly the right moment. This wasn't that moment. But it was close. Congratulations on your expansion, I said to Vanessa, my tone mild. Your boutique must be doing really well. It is, she said, and something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. As if she'd expected me to get angry, to defend myself. To give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Business has been incredible. We're opening a second location next month. That's ambitious, I said. Especially in this economy. But I'm sure you've done your research. Made all the right connections. The emphasis on that last word was slight. So slight that most people at the table missed it. But Vanessa didn't. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. Of course, she said. That's what separates successful business owners from. She waved her hand vaguely in my direction. Everyone else. My grandmother cleared her throat. Marcus, dear. What are you going to do now? About your business? It was asked with concern, but I heard the doubt underneath. The assumption that I'd failed. That I'd messed up somehow. That Vanessa, with her successful boutique and her perfectly curated Instagram and her ability to always land on her feet, was the competent one while I was the struggling artist, the dreamer, the one who couldn't quite make it work. They had no idea. I'll figure something out, I said. I always do. Maybe you should get a real job, Uncle Thomas suggested, not unkindly. Something stable. Stop trying to start these businesses that never take off. My business had already taken off. My consulting firm, which I'd been building quietly for the past 2 years while working a day job, had just landed 3 major clients. I'd been profitable for 8 months. The loan wasn't for survival, it was for expansion. For hiring staff. For moving out of my apartment office and into real commercial space. But I'd let my family think I was struggling because it served my purposes. Because I'd needed them to underestimate me. To not ask questions. To not notice what I was really doing. Maybe, I said, taking a sip of water. I'll think about it. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. And something in her expression changed. Tensed. She stood abruptly. I have to take this. Client emergency. She left the room quickly, her heels clicking on my grandmother's hardwood floors. I watched her go, counting silently in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right on schedule. The call she was receiving wasn't from a client. It was from Mr. Patterson at Community First Bank, who was, at this very moment, informing her that her account had been flagged for suspicious activity, that there would be an investigation into certain irregular payments, that her expansion loan might be frozen pending the outcome. Phase 1. I'd learned something important over the past 3 weeks. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about architecture. About building something so carefully, so precisely, that when it falls exactly where you want it to. On exactly the person you want it to hit. And I'd built something spectacular. My cousin thought she'd destroyed me. Thought she'd taken away my chance at success out of jealousy or spite or whatever petty emotion had motivated her to bribe a bank officer and sabotage my loan application. What she didn't know, what no one at this table knew, was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of her from the moment I discovered her scheme. That the rejected loan was just one move in a much longer game. That while she'd been congratulating herself on crushing my dreams, I'd been quietly arranging for her entire business empire to collapse. But not today. Today, I just had to sit here. Smile. Pretend to be defeated. Let her think she'd won. Because the best revenge isn't immediate. It's inevitable. It's watching your enemy climb higher and higher, thinking they're safe. Not realizing you've been cutting the rope the entire time. Vanessa returned to the table 5 minutes later. Her face was pale, her confidence shaken. She didn't sit down. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine," she said, but her voice was tight. "Just a complication. I need to go." She left without saying goodbye to anyone else. And I watched through the window as she got into her BMW, the one she'd bought with money from her first expansion loan. The one that was about to be repossessed when the bank realized she'd obtained it through fraudulent means, and drove away too fast. My mother sat down beside me. "You okay, sweetie?" "I'm fine, Mom. Don't let Vanessa get to you. She's always been competitive." Competitive. That was one word for it. Cruel was another. Jealous was a third. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and smiled and finished my grandmother's pound cake. Under the table, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer. Documents filed. Timeline confirmed. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. I deleted the message and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Tomorrow, the real show would begin. Tomorrow, everyone would start to see what I'd been building in the shadows. Tomorrow, Vanessa's carefully constructed life would begin to crumble. But for now, I just had to wait. Patient. Calm. Preparing for the moment when everyone in this room would realize they'd underestimated Marcus Bryant. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late to stop what was coming. The memory hit me as I drove home from my grandmother's house, the moment I discovered Vanessa's betrayal. It had been 3 weeks ago, late on a Tuesday night, and I'd been at my favorite coffee shop. The one that stayed open until midnight for people like me who did their best work after dark. I'd been reviewing my rejected loan application for the 100th time. Trying to figure out what had gone wrong. My business plan was solid. My financials were clean. My credit score was excellent. There was no logical reason for Community First Bank to turn me down, especially given my father's history with the institution. That's when I'd overheard the conversation. 2 men at the next table, talking loudly enough that I couldn't help but listen. One of them was complaining about his job at the bank. About the pressure. About the ethical lines he'd been asked to cross. "This loan officer I know," the man had said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "He's been taking payments to influence loan decisions. Approving some that shouldn't be approved. Rejecting others that should sail through. He's going to get caught eventually. But right now he thinks he's invincible." His companion had made a disapproving sound. "Which bank?" "Community First. Guy named Patterson." My blood had run cold. I'd waited until they left, then I'd done what I'd always done when faced with a problem. I'd investigated. I'd started with public records. Pulled Patterson's financial history. Found patterns. Traced payments. Followed digital breadcrumbs until they led me somewhere I hadn't expected. To Vanessa. My cousin had been making monthly deposits into an offshore account that Patterson had tried to hide. $5,000 a month for 6 months. $30,000 total. All timed perfectly around when I'd been preparing my loan application. At first, I hadn't wanted to believe it. Vanessa and I had never been close, but we were family. We'd grown up together. Spent holidays together. Surely she wouldn't deliberately sabotage me. But the evidence didn't lie. And the more I dug, the worse it got. Vanessa hadn't just bribed Patterson to reject my loan. She'd actively worked to damage my chances. She'd fed him false information about my business. Suggested I had debt I didn't have. Implied I was unreliable. All while positioning herself as the competent, trustworthy one. Why? That had been the question that had kept me up at night. Why would she go to such lengths? The answer had come from an unexpected source, my grandmother's caregiver. A kind woman named Florence who'd been with our family for years. She'd been at my apartment dropping off some of my grandmother's old photo albums when I'd asked her, casually, if she knew why Vanessa might be so competitive with me. Florence had hesitated, then said quietly, "Your grandmother changed her will 2 years ago. After your father died. She's leaving the bulk of her estate to you, not Vanessa. Ed stifte here." What? Vanessa found out 6 months ago. She's been trying to prove you're incompetent ever since. She thinks if she can show your grandmother that you can't even get a simple business loan, she can contest the will. Argue that you're not financially responsible enough to handle an inheritance. It had all clicked into place. The timing. The malice. The deliberate cruelty of humiliating me at family gatherings. This wasn't just about business. It was about money. About inheritance. About Vanessa's belief that she deserved my grandmother's estate more than I did. And she'd been willing to destroy my business, my dreams, to get it. That's when I'd made my decision. Not in anger, though I'd been angry. But in cold calculation. If Vanessa wanted to play this game, I'd play it better. I'd be smarter. More thorough. More patient. I'd make sure that when she fell hard. Over the next 3 weeks, I'd become someone I'd never been before, methodical. Strategic. Relentless. I'd documented everything, every payment, every communication, every piece of evidence linking Vanessa to Patterson. I'd hired a lawyer. A sharp woman named Keisha Williams who specialized in financial crimes. This is enough to press charges, Keisha had told me, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. Bank fraud. Bribery. This could put both of them in prison. I don't want prison, I'd said. I want something better. What's better than justice? Poetic justice. And so we'd crafted a plan. Something elegant. Something that would use the very tools Vanessa had used against me to destroy her instead. Phase 1, alert the bank to Patterson's corruption without revealing my identity. Let them start an internal investigation. Watch as Vanessa's accounts got flagged, her loans got frozen, her financial life got put under a microscope. Phase 2, contact Vanessa's suppliers, her landlords, her business partners. Not as Marcus Bryant, the struggling cousin, but as a concerned financial consultant who'd noticed irregularities in her business model. Plant seeds of doubt. Make them ask questions. Make them pull back their support. Phase 3, wait. Watch. Let everything collapse naturally, inevitably, while I maintain perfect innocence. Now, driving home from my grandmother's house, I pulled into a gas station and checked my phone. 7 new messages. All confirmations that Phase 2 was proceeding according to schedule. Vanessa's boutique landlord had received an anonymous tip about her questionable financials and was requesting additional documentation before approving her second location lease. Her primary supplier had suddenly decided to require payment up front rather than extending her usual credit terms. Her business insurance provider had flagged her account for review. One by one, the supports she'd built her empire on were being removed. And she had no idea why. No idea that the struggling cousin she'd humiliated at Sunday dinner was the architect of her impending disaster. My phone rang. Keisha. Marcus. We have a problem. My stomach tightened. What kind of problem? Patterson's smarter than we thought. He started covering his tracks. Deleting communications. Moving money. If we wait too long, we might lose our evidence. So what do you recommend? We escalate. We go to the FBI now. Let them seize his records before he can destroy them. I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Escalating meant moving faster than I'd planned. It meant less control. Less precision. But it also meant Patterson couldn't weasel out of this. Do it, I said. But keep my name out of it as long as possible. I don't want Vanessa to know I'm involved until it's too late for her to do anything about it. Understood. I'll make the call tonight. After we hung up, I sat in my car, watching traffic pass on the highway. Part of me felt guilty. Vanessa was family. My grandmother loved her. This was going to devastate our whole family when the truth came out. But then I remembered her laughter this afternoon. The cruel delight in her eyes when she'd humiliated me in front of everyone. The deliberate malice of not just rejecting my loan, but sabotaging it. Bribing a bank officer. Risking my entire future out of jealousy and greed. She'd made her choices. Now she'd live with the consequences. I started the car and drove home to my apartment. Where my actual business, the successful one I'd been building while everyone thought I was failing, was waiting for me. I had 3 client presentations to prepare for this week. A staff meeting to plan now that I was expanding. A future to build while Vanessa's crumbled. The best part? None of this was illegal. I wasn't framing her. Wasn't fabricating evidence. I was simply revealing the truth. Exposing what she'd actually done. Using the system, the law, the banks, the business community, to hold her accountable for her own actions. She'd tried to bury me. Instead, she'd been digging her own grave the entire time. And I'd just been patient enough to let her finish. The call came at 7 the next morning. My mother, her voice shaking. "Marcus, have you seen the news?" I'd been awake for an hour already, working out in my apartment gym, but I grabbed my phone and pulled up the local news site. There, on the front page, Community First Bank executive arrested in loan fraud scheme. Below the headline was a photo of Mr. Patterson being led out of the bank in handcuffs. The article detailed the FBI's early morning raid, the evidence they'd seized, the charges being filed. Bank fraud, bribery, corruption. Each count carrying potential prison time. I saw it, I said to my mother, keeping my voice neutral. "Marcus, that's your loan officer. The one who rejected you. Do you think this is why you got turned down?" "Maybe," I said. "I don't know. You should call the bank. They might reconsider your application now that he's gone. They might owe you an explanation at least." "I'll think about it." But I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about what came next. About the fact that Patterson's arrest was already front-page news, which meant the investigation would move fast. Which meant Vanessa's involvement would surface within days, not weeks. I'd wanted to control the timing more carefully, but this worked too. Sometimes the best plans were the ones that adapted to changing circumstances. My phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. "FBI confirmed Patterson is cooperating. He's naming names to reduce his sentence. Your cousin's name is on the list. Probably 48 hours before they bring her in for questioning." 48 hours. 2 days before my entire family found out what Vanessa had done. 2 days before her reputation shattered. 2 days before everything I'd set in motion became unstoppable. I replied, "Keep me updated." Then I showered, dressed, and went to my day job, the boring, respectable office job I'd kept specifically because it made me look stable and reliable. The job my family knew about. The one that paid enough to live on but not enough to thrive on. The job that had been my cover while I built something much bigger underneath. My coworker, Bryce, was at the coffee maker when I arrived. "Did you see about that bank guy? The fraud thing?" "Yeah," I said, pouring my own coffee. "Crazy. That's the bank where your dad worked, right? For 30 years. Man, your dad would be rolling over in his grave. He was honest to a fault. He was. My father had been a loan officer at Community First Bank for 3 decades. He'd worked his way up from teller, putting himself through night school, earning promotions through sheer dedication. He'd never taken a bribe. Never bent the rules. Never compromised his integrity. When he died of a heart attack 2 years ago, the bank had honored him with a memorial plaque in the lobby. They'd talked about his character, his reliability, his commitment to doing things right. And Patterson had spit on that legacy by accepting bribes and manipulating loan decisions. By turning the institution my father had believed in into something corrupt. That's the part that had hurt most when I discovered Vanessa's scheme. Not just that she'd sabotaged me, but that she'd tarnished my father's memory in the process. Used the bank he'd loved as a tool against his own son. "Yeah," I said to Bryce. He would be angry. The morning passed slowly. Emails. Meetings. The usual office routine. But underneath my professional exterior, I was calculating. Planning the next moves. Thinking about how the dominoes would fall. At lunch, I got another text from Keisha. "Bank called. They want to meet with you. Tomorrow afternoon. Something about reconsidering your application." I smiled at my phone. Phase 3 beginning ahead of schedule. I texted back, "Set it up. But not tomorrow. Make them wait until next week. I want to seem busy. Disinterested. Smart. Will do." That was the thing about revenge. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure your opponent knew they'd lost. Making them realize, in excruciating detail, exactly how they'd underestimated you. Vanessa had laughed at my loan rejection. Soon, I'd be the one offered multiple loan options, better terms. Apologies for the unfortunate misunderstanding. And she'd be the one scrambling to explain her actions to FBI agents. The reversal was going to be spectacular. That evening, I went to visit my grandmother. Florence let me in, giving me a knowing look. She'd been the one who'd helped me understand Vanessa's motivations. And I suspected she approved of whatever I was doing, even if she didn't know the details. "She's in her room," Florence said. "Watching her shows." I found my grandmother in her adjustable bed, surrounded by pillows, a crime drama playing on the television. She muted it when she saw me. Marcus. What a nice surprise. I kissed her forehead and sat in the chair beside her bed. How are you feeling? Old. Tired. But still kicking. She studied my face with the sharp intelligence that 2 strokes hadn't diminished. You're up to something. What makes you say that? You have your father's face when he was planning something. That calm look. That patience. What are you planning? Baby? I hesitated. I'd never lied to my grandmother. But I wasn't ready to tell her everything yet. Not until it was done. Not until Vanessa's betrayal was fully exposed and there was no way to spin it. I'm just working on my business, I said. Trying to figure out my next steps after the loan rejection. She made a dismissive sound. That loan rejection was nonsense. I told your mother at the time. The bank should have approved you automatically, given your father's history. It wasn't that simple, Grandma. Nothing ever is. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. But I believe in you, Marcus. Always have. You're smart like your father. Patient. You think before you act. That's going to serve you well. I hope so. I know so. She paused. I also know Vanessa has been poisoning the well. Talking about you behind your back. Making you seem less competent than you are. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. I looked up sharply. Grandma, I'm old, not stupid. I see what she's doing. And I see what you're doing too, even if I don't know all the details. She squeezed my hand. Whatever you're planning, make sure it's worth it. Revenge has a cost. This isn't revenge, I said. This is justice. Is there a difference? I think so. Revenge is about making someone hurt. Justice is about making sure they can't hurt anyone else. She smiled. Then you're your father's son after all. He always cared more about protecting others than punishing wrongdoers. She released my hand and turned the volume back on her TV. Go on now. I can see you're distracted. Come back when you can focus on an old woman's stories. I left feeling both validated and unsettled. My grandmother had always been able to see through me. If she'd figured out I was planning something, others might too. I'd have to be more careful. More opaque. But I was so close now. Just a few more days and everything would be in place. Everything would be revealed. And Vanessa would finally face the consequences of her actions. As I drove home, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Marcus Bryant? Speaking. Mr. Bryant, my name is Theodore Castellano. I'm the CEO of Community First Bank. I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart rate spiking. The CEO. Not a subordinate. Not a PR person. The actual CEO was calling me directly. Mr. Castellano, I said carefully. How can I help you? I'll get straight to the point. We've become aware of serious irregularities regarding your loan application. Mr. Patterson's arrest has prompted a review of all his recent decisions. And your rejection has been flagged as highly suspicious. Based on your qualifications, there was no legitimate reason to turn you down. I see. Mr. Bryant. I knew your father. He was one of the best loan officers we ever had. A man of integrity and skill. And I'm ashamed that our institution failed his son. I'd like to make that right. What are you proposing? A personal meeting. You and me, in my office. I want to review your business plan myself and ensure you get a fair evaluation. No interference. No bias. Just an honest assessment. This was it. This was the moment when my patience paid off. When the bank that had rejected me came crawling back. When the CEO, personally called to apologize and offer me another chance. That's very generous, I said, keeping my voice even. But I'm not sure I'm interested anymore. I've been exploring other options. There was a pause. I could almost hear him recalculating. Good. Let him worry that he'd lost me. Let him realize I wasn't desperate. Wasn't waiting by the phone for their approval. I understand, he said finally. But I hope you'll at least give us a chance to explain what happened and make it right. Your father deserves that much from us. The invocation of my father was manipulative, but it was also effective. Because he was right. My father did deserve better from this bank. He'd given them 30 years of his life, and they'd let corruption flourish under his legacy. I'll think about it, I said. Have your assistant call mine to schedule something. You have an assistant? I have a business, Mr. Castellano. A successful one. Whether you approve my loan or not. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of knowing I'd just made the CEO of a major bank sweat. Just made him realize I wasn't the struggling, desperate applicant they dismissed. I was someone who had options. Someone who'd been building something impressive while they'd been busy being corrupt. Someone who didn't need them nearly as much as they were about to need me. The phone rang again immediately. Keisha. Did the bank CEO just call you? She asked without preamble. How did you know? Because he called me right before he called you. Trying to figure out your lawyer situation. Trying to assess how much trouble they're in. She sounded delighted. Marcus, they're terrified. They think you're going to sue. They think this is going to be a PR nightmare. They want to settle before you make this public. I'm not looking for a settlement. I know. But they don't know that. And their fear is useful. We can leverage it. How? We make them offer you better terms than you originally asked for. We make them beg you to give them another chance to prove they're not a corrupt institution. We make them put it in writing that they're doing this because your original rejection was improperly influenced. And then, when Vanessa's involvement comes out, we make sure everyone knows that the bank's fraud directly targeted you because of her. I smiled. That's brilliant. That's my job. Now, let me handle the bank. You just keep being patient and professional. Don't let them see how angry you are. Don't let them see how satisfying this is. Just be the bigger person who's willing to accept their apology. I can do that. I know you can. That's why this is going to work. After we hung up, I sat in my car, watching the sun set over the city. Everything was falling into place. Patterson arrested. The bank panicking. Vanessa's exposure imminent. My business thriving. My reputation about to be restored. In 72 hours, the entire narrative would flip. The struggling cousin who couldn't even get a simple loan would be revealed as a successful entrepreneur who'd been deliberately sabotaged by jealous family members. And Vanessa, who'd laughed at my failure, would be the one everyone pitied. Justice, I was learning, wasn't always swift. But when it was patient, when it was methodical, when it was perfectly executed, it was devastating. And I was about to be devastated in all the best ways. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. All from family members. All from the same person, really, my mother, calling over and over, each voicemail more urgent than the last. Marcus, call me back immediately. Marcus, this is serious. We need to talk. Marcus, Vanessa is in trouble. Real trouble. Call me. I didn't call back right away. Instead, I made coffee, ate breakfast, checked my email, went through my normal morning routine with deliberate calm. Making her wait. Making everyone wait. When I finally called, my mother answered on the first ring. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for hours. I was sleeping. Then I was getting ready for work. What's going on? It's Vanessa. The FBI showed up at her boutique this morning. They wanted to ask her questions about that loan officer. The one who got arrested. Marcus. They think she was involved in his fraud scheme. I let silence stretch on the line. Silence that would seem like shock to her. Surprise. Concern for family. That's crazy, I said finally. Why would they think that? I don't know. She's not answering her phone. Your Uncle Thomas is beside himself. Your grandmother is asking questions. Marcus, this is going to destroy our family if it's true. Is it true? How would I know? Vanessa swears she's innocent. Says it's all a misunderstanding. But the FBI doesn't show up at someone's business over a misunderstanding. No, I agreed. They don't. Your uncle wants to hire a lawyer. A good one. Someone who can make this go away. But lawyers like that are expensive. He's asking if you know anyone. Because of your business connections. The irony was exquisite. They wanted me to help the person who'd tried to ruin me. Expected me to immediately jump to family defense. To circle the wagons, to protect Vanessa from the consequences of her own actions. I might know someone, I said. But Mom, if Vanessa actually did something illegal, no lawyer is going to make that go away. The best thing she can do is cooperate and tell the truth. She says she is telling the truth. She says she never did anything wrong. Then she has nothing to worry about. My mother was quiet for a moment. Marcus, you sound different. Calmer than I expected. Aren't you worried about this affecting our family? About what people will think? I'm worried about the truth coming out, I said honestly. Whatever that truth is. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The dominoes were falling faster than I'd anticipated. Vanessa was already in the FBI's crosshairs. The family was already panicking. And I was still perfectly positioned as the innocent bystander, the concerned cousin. The one who'd been hurt by Patterson's corruption but wasn't involved in any revenge schemes. My phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. FBI agent handling the case wants to talk to you. As a witness. About your rejected loan application. Are you ready? I'd been ready for this. Had prepared for it extensively. Because being a witness meant I could share what I knew without seeming vindictive. I could present evidence without looking like I was on a revenge mission. I could help build the case against Vanessa while appearing cooperative and concerned about justice rather than personal vendettas. Set it up, I texted back. The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon, at the FBI field office downtown. I took the afternoon off work, told my boss it was related to the bank fraud case, which was technically true, and drove to the federal building with a folder of documents I'd carefully prepared. Agent Harold Pierce was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every kind of fraud imaginable. He shook my hand and led me to a small interview room. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Bryant. I know this must be difficult, given the family connection." "Family connection?" "To Vanessa Morrison. She's your cousin, correct?" "Yes," I said. "But I didn't know she was involved in Patterson's scheme until my mother told me this morning." "Is she really?" "Involved, I mean?" Pierce didn't answer directly. Instead, he opened a file and laid out several documents. "Let me walk you through what we know. You applied for a business loan at Community First Bank 3 months ago. The application was handled by Mr. Patterson. He rejected it. Can you tell me about that process?" I walked him through it. The application. The meeting. The rejection that didn't make sense. The lack of clear explanation for why I'd been turned down despite having strong financials and a solid business plan. "Did you suspect at the time that something was wrong?" Pierce asked. I knew something didn't add up. My credit is good. My business plan was thorough. And given my father's history with the bank, 30 years of service, I expected at least a fair evaluation. "Your father was a loan officer there?" "One of their best." Pierce made a note. "So you felt the rejection was, what? Personal?" I didn't know what it was. But it didn't feel legitimate. He pulled out another document. "We've recovered financial records showing that Ms. Morrison made regular payments to Mr. Patterson over a 6-month period. Payments totaling $30,000. Those payments corresponded with the timeline of your loan application. Do you know why your cousin might have wanted your loan application rejected?" This was the moment I'd been preparing for. The moment when I could reveal Vanessa's motivation without seeming vindictive. "My grandmother changed her will 2 years ago," I said slowly. "After my father died. She's leaving the bulk of her estate to me instead of to Vanessa. I only found out about this recently, through my grandmother's caregiver. Apparently, Vanessa discovered it 6 months ago." Pierce's pen scratched across his notepad. "So Ms. Morrison had a financial motive to discredit you." "It would seem so. If she could prove I was financially irresponsible, couldn't even get a simple business loan, she might have grounds to challenge the will. Show I'm not competent to handle an inheritance." "Did you confront her about this?" "No. I didn't know she was behind the loan rejection until after I heard about Patterson's arrest and started putting pieces together. It was technically true. I hadn't confronted her. I just systematically built a case against her and handed it to the FBI on a silver platter." Pierce studied me for a long moment. "Mr. Bryant, you seem remarkably calm about all of this. Your cousin allegedly bribed a bank officer to sabotage your business. Your family reputation is being damaged. Yet you're sitting here answering questions without any visible anger." "I'm angry," I said quietly. "But I learned from my father that anger without purpose is just noise. If Vanessa did what you say she did, then the system will hold her accountable. My anger won't change that. But my cooperation might help ensure justice is served." "Justice?" Pierce repeated. "Not revenge?" "There's a difference." He smiled slightly. "Yes, there is." He closed his folder. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Bryant. This has been very helpful. We may need to speak with you again as the investigation progresses." "Of course. I'm happy to help." As I stood to leave, Pierce said, "One more thing. The bank CEO called me yesterday. Castellano. He wanted to know if you were planning to sue. He seemed very concerned about your intentions." "I haven't decided what I'm planning." "Fair enough. But if you do decide to take legal action, I'd wait until our investigation is complete. The evidence we're building will only strengthen your position." I nodded and left, walking out of the federal building with the sun on my face and a sense of completion in my chest. I'd just given the FBI everything they needed to build an airtight case against Vanessa. And I'd done it as a concerned victim, not a vengeful cousin. Perfect. My phone rang immediately. My brother, Anthony. "Marcus, what the hell is going on? Mom says you were just at the FBI? They wanted to talk to me about my loan rejection. And I told them the truth. Which is that Vanessa bribed Patterson to reject my loan so she could make me look financially incompetent and challenge Grandma's will." Anthony was silent for a long moment. "You're kidding." "I wish I was. Marcus, this is going to tear the family apart. Vanessa tore the family apart when she decided to sabotage me. I'm just making sure everyone knows what she did. But she's family. We're supposed to protect each other. Not when one of us is actively trying to destroy another. That's not family. That's warfare. He sighed heavily. Mom's going to have a breakdown when this all comes out. Then Vanessa should have thought of that before she did what she did. You sound different. Harder. I'm just done pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Vanessa made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. After we hung up, I drove to my actual office, not the day job, but the suite I'd been leasing for my consulting business for the past 8 months. The business that was thriving. The one my family knew nothing about because I'd kept it separate, kept it private, kept it safe from people like Vanessa who might try to sabotage it. My assistant, Corinne, looked up when I walked in. How'd it go with the FBI? Perfectly. Good. Because you have 3 messages from reporters. They're asking about the bank fraud case. About your connection to it. About whether you're planning to take legal action against the bank. I sat down at my desk and reviewed the messages. Local news. Business press. Even a freelancer from a national outlet. They all wanted the same story: victim of bank fraud seeks justice. Hardworking entrepreneur sabotaged by corrupt loan officer and jealous family member. It was a great story. The kind that generated clicks and sympathy and public support. Set up interviews for next week, I told Corinne. After the bank meeting. I want to control the narrative, but I want to do it at the right time. Understood. Also, 3 new client inquiries came in this morning. People who read about your situation in the news and want to work with someone who's that thorough and strategic. I smiled. Adversity as marketing. Who would have thought? You did. That's why you're good at this. She wasn't wrong. I'd spent 2 years building this business quietly, learning from every setback. Turning every obstacle into opportunity. And now, when most people in my situation would be floundering, I was positioned to not just survive but thrive. That evening, I went back to visit my grandmother. She was watching the news when I arrived, specifically. A segment about Patterson's arrest that mentioned multiple individuals under investigation. She muted the TV when she saw me. Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk. He said. Vanessa came to see me this afternoon, she said without preamble. She was crying. Saying it's all a misunderstanding. That she never did anything wrong. That someone is setting her up. What do you think? I think she's lying. My grandmother's voice was hard. I think she's been lying for months. And I think you know more about this than you're telling me. I met her eyes. I know she bribed a bank officer to reject my loan application. I know she's been trying to make me look financially incompetent so she can challenge your will. I know she's been sabotaging me for 6 months while pretending to be family. And what are you doing about it? I'm making sure the truth comes out. Through proper channels. Through the legal system. I'm not doing anything illegal or unethical. I'm just refusing to protect someone who tried to destroy me. She studied my face for a long moment. Your father would be proud of you. And disappointed in you. Do you understand that? Yes. Proud because you're not letting yourself be a victim. Disappointed because you're letting this consume you. Letting it turn you into something harder than you were. I'm not hard. I'm just done being soft. There's a difference between being soft and being kind, Marcus. Don't lose your kindness in pursuit of justice. I won't, I promised. Though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. She reached for my hand. Whatever happens with Vanessa, whatever the FBI finds, whatever comes out in the news, I want you to know something. The will I made leaving most of my estate to you? It wasn't because I don't love Vanessa. It's because I know you'll do something meaningful with it. You'll build something. Help people. Create something that lasts. That's the kind of legacy your father would want. The kind I want. Grandma, but if this revenge, this justice, whatever you want to call it, if it costs you your soul, then it's not worth any inheritance. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Now go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be difficult for all of us. She was right about that. Tomorrow, the news would officially break that Vanessa was under investigation. Tomorrow, my family would fracture. Tomorrow, everything I'd been building toward would become public and irreversible. And I'd have to live with whatever came next. As I drove home, I thought about my grandmother's warning. About the cost of revenge. About the difference between justice and vengeance. About whether I was still the person my father had raised me to be, or whether I'd become someone else entirely. But then I thought about Vanessa's laughter at that Sunday dinner. About the deliberate cruelty of sabotaging not just my loan but my entire reputation. About the 6 months she'd spent actively working to destroy my future while smiling to my face. And I decided that whatever I'd become, it was better than being someone who let that slide. Better than being a doormat. Better than being the nice guy who finished last while corrupt people prospered. My phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. Bank wants to meet Thursday. CEO's office. They're prepared to approve your original loan amount plus offer additional incentives as apology. They're scared, Marcus. Really scared. I texted back, tell them I'll think about it. Let them sweat until Wednesday. Because that's what power felt like. Making people wait. Making them worry. Making them realize they'd underestimated you and now had to face the consequences. It felt good. Better than I'd expected. Maybe too good. But I'd worry about that later. Right now, I had a business to run, a reputation to rebuild, and a cousin to watch fall from grace. And I was going to enjoy every minute of it. Wednesday morning brought the news I'd been expecting. The headline across every local media outlet, business owner under FBI investigation for bank fraud conspiracy. Vanessa's photo was everywhere. Not a mugshot yet, but her professional headshot from her boutique's website, smiling and confident, completely unaware her world was about to implode. The article detailed the allegations. The payments to Patterson. The timeline corresponding with my loan application. The suggestion that she'd been working to discredit a family member for financial gain. They didn't name me specifically, but anyone who knew our family would figure it out quickly. My phone started ringing before I'd finished my coffee. First my mother. Then my Uncle Thomas. Then Aunt Beatrice. Then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanting to know if it was true. If Vanessa had really done this. If I'd really been the target. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted them to sit with the information first. To process it. To realize that their assumptions about who I was and what I was capable of had been completely wrong. Instead, I went to work. The day job. Where Bryce was already at his desk, looking at the news on his phone. Hey, isn't that your cousin? He asked. The one from the bank fraud thing? Yeah. Man. Small world. She's the one who supposedly bribed that loan officer? Apparently. Weren't you guys at the same family dinner like last week? When she was bragging about her business. Sunday dinner. Yes. Bryce's eyes widened. Holy shit. She was bragging about her loan approval while you'd just been rejected by the same guy she'd bribed? That's cold. That's Vanessa. Are you okay? This has to be messing with your head. I'm fine, I said. Just ready for the truth to finally come out. Around noon. I finally answered when my mother called for the 8th time. Marcus, please. We need to talk about this. What's there to talk about, Mom? About how we handle this. About how we protect the family. About, protect the family? I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. Mom, Vanessa tried to destroy my business. She bribed a bank officer. She spent 6 months actively sabotaging me so she could steal my inheritance. And you want to talk about protecting her? She's family, so am I. Where was the family protection when she was lying about me? When she was making me look incompetent at Sunday dinners? When she was laughing about my loan rejection? My mother was quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I didn't know. None of us knew. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Marcus, please. Your Uncle Thomas is asking if you'll talk to the FBI. Ask them to go easy on her. She's his only daughter. And I'm your only oldest son. That is son. The one who inherited his integrity. Did Uncle Thomas ever think about that before Vanessa decided to destroy me? She wasn't trying to destroy you, yes, she was. And she almost succeeded. The only reason she didn't is because I was smarter than she gave me credit for. What does that mean? I shouldn't have said it. Shouldn't have revealed my hand. But I was tired of pretending. Tired of playing the innocent victim when I'd been the architect of Vanessa's downfall from the moment I discovered her scheme. It means I knew what she was doing weeks ago. It means I gathered evidence and gave it to the right people. It means I didn't just roll over and let her win. I fought back. Another long silence. You reported her? I told the truth to people who could do something about it. That's not the same as reporting her. That's called not covering up crimes. Marcus. My mother's voice broke. What have you done? What I had to do. What Dad would have wanted me to do. Hold people accountable, even when they're family. Your father would never have wanted this. Family destroying family. Vanessa destroyed family when she chose greed over loyalty. I just made sure everyone knew about it. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. From the rush of finally saying what I'd been holding back. Of finally stopping the performance of the struggling, defeated cousin and showing them who I really was. Strategic. Prepared. Unwilling to be a victim. My phone buzzed. A text from Anthony. Mom's crying. Uncle Thomas is threatening to disown you. Grandma wants to talk to you immediately. What the hell are you doing? I texted back, what I should have done from the beginning. Refusing to be manipulated. This isn't you, Marcus. You're not vindictive. I'm not being vindictive. I'm being honest. There's a difference. He didn't respond. That afternoon, I had my meeting with CEO Castellano at Community First Bank. I drove there in my decent but not flashy car, wearing a suit I'd bought off the rack 3 years ago, carrying a briefcase that had been my father's. Looking exactly like what I was, a successful professional who didn't need to show off to prove his worth. The bank was in crisis mode. I could see it in the way employees moved through the lobby, quickly, nervously, avoiding eye contact with customers. In the way security had been beefed up, as if they expected protesters or angry clients. In the way the receptionist's hands shook slightly when she called upstairs to announce my arrival. Mr. Castellano will see you now. Top floor. I took the elevator to the executive suite, where I was greeted by an assistant who looked like she'd been crying. She led me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. Castellano stood when I entered, extending his hand. Mr. Bryant. Thank you for coming. Please. Seat. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 50, with silver hair and the kind of expensive suit that announced executive power. But there was something desperate in his eyes. Something that said he knew this meeting mattered more than any business deal he'd negotiated. Mr. Castellano, I said, shaking his hand and sitting in the leather chair across from his desk. Please, call me Theodore. Given the circumstances, I think we can dispense with formality. He sat down heavily. Marcus, may I call you Marcus? Of course. Marcus, I'm going to be direct. The bank is in crisis. Patterson's arrest has damaged our reputation severely. But the revelation that a customer's own family member bribed one of our officers to sabotage their loan application? That's beyond crisis. That's existential. I said nothing. Just waited. I've reviewed your original application personally, he continued. Multiple times. It's one of the strongest loan applications I've seen in my career. There was absolutely no legitimate reason to reject it. And the fact that we allowed corruption to influence our lending decisions, that's unforgivable. Yes, I said simply. It is. I want to make this right. Not just approve your loan, but apologize publicly for what happened. Acknowledge that you were wronged by our institution. Ensure it never happens again. That's a good start. He pulled out a folder. I've prepared a revised loan offer. Your original request was for $500,000 at 6.5% interest. I'm prepared to approve $750,000 at 5.5%. With a 2-year grace period on payments and no prepayment penalties. Additionally, I'd like to offer you a position on our Small Business Advisory Board. Help us rebuild trust with the community. It was an extraordinary offer. Far beyond what I'd originally requested. More than I needed, honestly. But I kept my expression neutral. That's generous. It's the least we can do. Your father gave this bank 30 years of his life. We failed his son. That's not something I can fix with money alone, but I can try. I let the silence stretch. Let him worry that I'd reject it. Let him see that I wasn't desperate anymore, if I ever had been. I'll need to consult with my lawyer, I said finally. But assuming the terms are as you've described, I'm willing to consider it. Relief washed over his face. Of course. Take whatever time you need. I'll have the formal documents prepared and sent to your attorney by end of business today. There's one more thing. His expression became wary. What's that? I want a formal, public apology from the bank. Not buried in fine print. Not hidden in a press release. I want you to acknowledge what happened. How it happened, and how you're ensuring it never happens again. I want it clear that this wasn't my failure. It was the bank's. Castellano nodded slowly. I can do that. In fact, I think it's necessary. For the bank's integrity as much as your reputation. Good. I stood to leave, and he stood as well. Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure. How did you know? How did you figure out what Ms. Morrison had done? I smiled. I paid attention. I asked questions. I didn't accept the first answer I was given. My father taught me that. Question everything. Verify everything. Trust but verify. He must have been a remarkable man. He was. As I left the bank, walking out through a lobby full of nervous employees and curious customers, I felt something shift. Not satisfaction exactly. Not even vindication. Just a quiet sense of rightness. I'd been wronged. And now I was being made whole. Not through violence or illegal schemes or emotional manipulation. Just through the steady application of truth and the persistent pursuit of justice. My phone rang. Keisha. I just got the loan documents. Marcus, this is incredible. He's giving you more than you asked for. I know. Are you going to accept? I'm going to negotiate a few minor points, let him think he worked for it. Then accept. But yes. She laughed. You're enjoying this. Is that wrong? No. It's human. You've earned the right to enjoy your victory. Just don't let it consume you. Everyone keeps telling me that. Because everyone's worried about you. This kind of revenge, even justified revenge, it changes people. Makes them harder. More cynical. Maybe I needed to be harder. Maybe I was too soft before. Maybe. Or maybe you just needed to learn when to be hard and when to be kind. That's the real skill. After we hung up, I drove to my consulting office. Corinne had scheduled back-to-back client meetings for the afternoon. People who wanted to work with the strategic thinker who'd taken down a corrupt bank officer and his own cousin without breaking any laws. My business was about to explode. All because I'd refused to be a victim. All because I'd been patient enough to build my case and smart enough to execute it perfectly. All because I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about building something so impressive that their attempts to destroy you only make you stronger. That evening, I finally went to see my grandmother. Florence let me in with a worried expression. She's been waiting for you. All day. She's upset, Marcus. Really upset. I found my grandmother in her room. But not in bed. She was in her wheelchair by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. She didn't turn when I entered. Grandma. Close the door. I did. Sit down. I sat. She finally turned to look at me, and the disappointment in her eyes was worse than any anger could have been. Tell me what you did. All of it. No lies. No omissions. So I told her. About discovering Vanessa's scheme. About investigating Patterson. About gathering evidence and giving it to the FBI. About being patient and strategic and methodical. About every step I'd taken to ensure Vanessa faced consequences for her actions. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. You destroyed your cousin, she said finally. I exposed her crimes. You could have talked to her first. Given her a chance to make it right. Instead, you went straight to the FBI. Would talking to her have made her give back the money she paid Patterson? Would it have made the bank approve my loan? Would it have undone 6 months of sabotage? No. But it might have kept this family from splitting apart. Vanessa split this family when she chose crime over loyalty. I just made sure everyone saw it. My grandmother's hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Your father would be ashamed of you. The words hit like a physical blow. Dad taught me to stand up for myself. To not let people take advantage. He taught you to be better than your enemies, not to become like them. He taught you that integrity means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Even when you want revenge. This isn't revenge. This is justice. Is it? Or is it just revenge you've managed to legalize? I didn't have an answer for that. She sighed. Marcus, I understand why you did it. I do. Vanessa wronged you terribly. She deserves to face consequences. But the way you went about it, so calculated, so cold, that's not the grandson I know. That's not the man your father raised. Maybe I had to become someone different to survive this. Or maybe you let your hurt turn you into someone you're not. She reached for my hand. I'm not changing my will. You're still my primary heir. But I want you to think hard about what you've done and who you're becoming. Because wealth without character is just money. And I don't want to leave my legacy to someone who's forgotten how to be kind. I left my grandmother's house feeling worse than I had in weeks. Worse than when Vanessa had laughed at my lone rejection. Worse than when I discovered her betrayal. Because my grandmother was right. I had become harder. More calculating. More willing to hurt others in pursuit of justice. And I wasn't sure how to feel about that. As I drove home, I passed Vanessa's boutique. The lights were off. A sign in the window said temporarily closed. Her BMW wasn't in the parking lot. My revenge had worked. She was destroyed. Her business was failing. Her reputation was ruined. Her legal troubles were just beginning. I'd won. So why did it feel so empty? Thursday morning, I woke up to find my phone flooded with messages. Not from family this time, but from journalists. The story had gone national. Bank CEO apologizes to fraud victim in unprecedented move. Family betrayal. Cousin bribed bank officer to block loan. Justice served. Entrepreneur fights back against corruption. They'd found everything. The connection between me and Vanessa. The fact that my father had worked at the bank for 30 years. The inheritance angle. The FBI investigation. All of it laid out in black and white for the entire country to see. My inbox was full of interview requests. CNN. Fox Business. The Wall Street Journal. Local news stations. Podcasts. Everyone wanted to tell the story of the underdog who'd fought back against family betrayal and institutional corruption. I should have been thrilled. This was exactly what I'd wanted. My reputation restored, Vanessa exposed, my business about to benefit from massive publicity. But my grandmother's words kept echoing in my head. Wealth without character is just money. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, unsure what to do next. The plan had worked perfectly. Too perfectly. Every domino had fallen exactly as I'd arranged it. Vanessa was destroyed. The bank was scrambling to make amends. My business was about to explode. But at what cost? My phone rang. Anthony, are you seeing this? He asked without preamble. You're all over the news. I see it. Marcus, this is insane. They're calling you a hero. They're saying you exposed corruption. They're acting like you're some kind of justice warrior. I just told the truth. You did more than that. You orchestrated this. You planned it. You waited for exactly the right moment to drop the bomb. Don't pretend you didn't know this would happen. Maybe I knew. So what? Vanessa did something criminal. She deserved to be exposed. Yeah, but did you have to destroy her so completely? Did you have to make it national news? Did you have to ruin her entire life? I was quiet for a moment. What would you have done, Anthony? If someone spent 6 months sabotaging your career, bribing officials, trying to steal your inheritance? Would you have just let it go? Talked it out over coffee? I don't know. But I wouldn't have turned it into a public spectacle. I wouldn't have made sure the entire country knew about it. I didn't make it a spectacle. The news did. I just told the truth to the authorities. And you knew exactly what would happen when you did. Come on, Marcus. You're smarter than this. You planned every step. You wanted this outcome. He was right. And I couldn't admit it without confirming my grandmother's worst fears about what I'd become. I have to go, I said. Client meeting. Marcus, I hung up. The truth was, I had wanted this outcome. Had planned for it. Had carefully orchestrated every revelation to maximize impact. And now that I had it, now that Vanessa's life was in ruins and mine was ascending, I didn't feel as good about it as I'd expected. I felt hollow. That afternoon, I had 3 client meetings. All new business. All people who'd read about my situation and wanted to hire someone that strategic, that careful, that successful at navigating complex problems. You're exactly what we need, one client told me. Someone who thinks 3 steps ahead. Who doesn't just react but plans. Who wins. Winning. That's what everyone kept calling it. As if life were a game with winners and losers, and I'd just scored the ultimate victory. But winning was supposed to feel different than this. It was supposed to feel triumphant. Satisfying. Complete. Instead, I just felt tired. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Vanessa. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. The smart thing would be to delete it. To not engage. To let my lawyer handle any communication. To maintain the distance I'd so carefully constructed. But something made me respond. Okay. Where? Coffee shop on Broad Street. 1 hour. Just you and me. It was a trap. Had to be. She'd bring a lawyer or try to record me admitting something or attempt to manipulate me into dropping charges that weren't mine to drop. But I went anyway. The coffee shop was nearly empty on a Thursday afternoon. Vanessa was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking nothing like the confident, polished woman from Sunday dinner. She looked exhausted, defeated, human. I sat down across from her without saying anything. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I'm not sure why I did. I wanted to say I'm sorry. In person. Not through lawyers. Not in court. Just person to person. Okay. I know it doesn't change anything. I know you're never going to forgive me. But I needed to say it anyway. I'm sorry, Marcus. For all of it. For the loan. For the sabotage. For being so blind and greedy that I thought I could get away with it. I didn't respond. Just waited. Can I ask you something? She said. When did you know? When did you figure out what I'd done? 3 weeks before you laughed at me at Sunday dinner. Her face crumpled. You knew. That whole time, you knew. And you just let me keep digging myself deeper. Yes. Why? Why didn't you confront me? Give me a chance to stop? Would you have stopped? She was quiet for a long moment. No. Probably not. I was too far in by then. Too committed to the lie. Then there's your answer. But you could have warned me. Could have told me you knew before you went to the FBI. Before you destroyed my entire life. Like you warned me before you bribed Patterson? Like you gave me a chance to defend myself before you spent 6 months ruining my reputation? That's different. How? How is it different? She had no answer. We sat in silence for a while. The coffee shop's background music, something smooth and jazzy, felt absurdly out of place. I'm going to lose everything, Vanessa said finally. My business. My reputation. Probably my freedom. The FBI is talking about 5 years in prison. 5 years, Marcus. That's what happens when you commit crimes. I know. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not even asking you to do anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did was wrong. Incredibly wrong. And you were right to expose it. So why did you do it? Why go to such lengths? Money. That's the simple answer. Grandma's changing her will, leaving most of her estate to you. It felt unfair. I'd spent so much time taking care of her, visiting her, being the good granddaughter. And she was leaving it all to you because Dad's dead and you're the son he never got to raise properly or some sentimental nonsense. That's cold. I know. That's the person I became. Someone who saw family as competition. Who saw an inheritance as a prize to be won rather than a responsibility to be honored. She looked at me directly. But you know what the really sad part is? What? You became that person too. Maybe not for money, but for revenge. You saw me as an enemy to be destroyed rather than a cousin who'd lost her way. We both turned this family into a battlefield. The words stung because they were true. I had seen her as an enemy. Had planned her destruction with the same cold calculation she'd used against me. The difference is I didn't commit any crimes, I said. No. You just made sure everyone knew about mine. In the most public, humiliating way possible. You humiliated yourself. I just made sure people saw it. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're blameless in all this? I stood up. I came here as a courtesy. To hear your apology. I heard it. Now I'm leaving. Marcus, wait. She grabbed my arm. Please. Just tell me one thing. Was it worth it? Destroying me. Getting your revenge. Building your perfect case and watching it all play out exactly as you planned. Was it worth it? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd made terrible choices and was now paying terrible prices. Someone who'd let jealousy and greed turn her into a person she didn't recognize. Someone who'd lost everything pursuing the wrong things. Someone who looked a lot like what I was afraid I might become. I don't know yet, I said honestly. Ask me in a year. I left without looking back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Vanessa's question. Was it worth it? I'd won. By every objective measure, I'd won. My business was thriving. My reputation was restored. The bank was offering me better terms than I'd originally requested. Justice had been served. But justice felt a lot less satisfying than I'd expected. Around 2 in the morning, I got out of bed and pulled out a box from my closet. Inside were letters from my father, notes he'd written me over the years. Birthday cards. Graduation congratulations. Random encouragement. I found the one I was looking for. A letter he'd written me when I'd started college. Full of advice about becoming a man. Marcus, it read in his careful handwriting, the world will give you many opportunities to become hard. To become cynical. To become someone who wins at all costs. Resist those opportunities. The greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies. It's remaining yourself despite what they do to you. Be kind even when others aren't. Be honest even when it costs you. Be the man you want to be. Not the man circumstances try to make you. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Keisha. She answered on the 4th ring, groggy. Marcus? It's 2 in the morning. I need to do something. Something that's going to sound crazy. Okay. I want to write a statement. About Vanessa. About what happened. But not the version everyone expects. Not the victim celebrating justice. Something different. What kind of different? The kind where I acknowledge that revenge, even justified revenge, has costs. Where I take responsibility for my part in how this played out. Where I admit that maybe I went too far. She was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, you realize that kind of statement could undermine your entire position? Could make you look weak? Could give Vanessa's lawyers ammunition? I know. Then why do it? Because my father would have wanted me to. Because my grandmother was right. I've been so focused on winning that I forgot to be kind. Because I don't like who I've become in pursuit of justice. You became someone strong. Someone who doesn't let others take advantage. Maybe. But I also became someone who destroys people efficiently. And I'm not sure that's who I want to be. Keisha sighed. You're sure about this? Once you put something like that out there, you can't take it back. I'm sure. Can you help me draft it? Give me an hour. I'll call you back. True to her word, she called back at 3:15. We spent 2 hours crafting a statement that was honest without being weak. Compassionate without excusing Vanessa's crimes, and reflective without undoing the justice that had been served. By 5:30, we had something I could live with. Sleep on it, Keisha advised. Read it again in the morning with fresh eyes. Then decide. But I didn't sleep on it. I released it at 6 a.m. posting it on my business website and sending it to the journalists who'd been requesting interviews. The statement read, "Over the past few weeks, my family's private struggles have become very public. My cousin's actions, bribing a bank officer to sabotage my loan application, were wrong and illegal. I don't regret reporting those actions to the appropriate authorities. Justice needed to be served. But I do regret how I went about it. I knew for weeks what she'd done, and instead of confronting her privately, instead of giving her a chance to make things right, I methodically built a case designed to cause maximum damage. I told myself I was seeking justice, but if I'm honest, I was also seeking revenge. My father taught me that how you win matters as much as whether you win. He taught me that integrity means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Even when you're hurt, even when you want payback. I forgot those lessons in my pursuit of vindication. Vanessa wronged me terribly. But I also wronged her by turning her worst actions into a public spectacle. By making sure her downfall was as devastating as possible. By prioritizing my own vindication over family reconciliation. I don't regret exposing corruption or seeking justice. But I do regret the hardness that grew in me while I was doing it. I regret becoming someone more focused on winning than on being kind. I regret letting hurt turn me into someone my father might not recognize. This doesn't excuse what Vanessa did. It doesn't mean she shouldn't face consequences. But it does mean I need to take responsibility for my own choices in how this played out. For the person I became in pursuit of justice. For forgetting that revenge, even justified revenge, has costs to your own soul. I hope my family can heal from this. I hope I can too. And I hope anyone reading this who's been wronged by someone they trust will remember, justice is important. But so is remaining the person you want to be while you pursue it. Marcus Bryant by 7 a.m. The statement had been picked up by every major outlet that had covered the original story. By 8 a.m., my phone was exploding with responses. Some people called me weak. Said I was betraying the victims of corruption everywhere by showing compassion to someone who'd wronged me. Said I was being manipulated by guilt into backtracking on justified actions. But others understood. Called it brave. Called it mature. Called it the kind of character their own parents had tried to teach them. One woman emailed to say she'd been planning revenge on a former business partner who'd stolen from her. But my statement made her reconsider whether destroying him was worth becoming someone she didn't like. My mother called at 8:30, crying. "Marcus, I just read your statement. Thank you. Thank you for being the bigger person. Thank you for being your father's son. I'm trying to be, Mom. I'm not sure I succeeded. You did. By acknowledging you went too far. By showing compassion even while standing firm on justice, that's exactly what your father would have done." Anthony texted, "Proud of you, bro. That took guts." My grandmother called at 9. "Come see me. Today." When I arrived at her house that afternoon, she was in her wheelchair in the living room, looking stronger than she had in days. "Sit down, Marcus," he said. "I read your statement. I figured. It was brave. Honest. Difficult. Exactly what I'd hoped you'd do." She reached for my hand. "You made mistakes. You let anger guide you more than wisdom. But you also had the courage to admit it. That's the hardest part of growing up, acknowledging when you've become someone you don't want to be and choosing to change. I'm not sure I've changed yet. I just admitted I need to. That's the first step. The most important one." She squeezed my hand. "Your father would be proud of you. Not for the revenge, but for the reflection. Not for destroying Vanessa, but for recognizing the cost of doing so. Vanessa still has to face justice. I know. And she will. But you don't have to be the one twisting the knife while she does. You can step back now. Let the system work. Focus on building your life rather than destroying hers. That's what I want to do. I'm just not sure how to undo the hardness. How to become soft again without becoming weak. You don't become soft again. You become wise. You learn when to be hard and when to be gentle. When to fight and when to forgive. That's not weakness. That's strength with nuance." We talked for another hour, about my father, about family. About the difference between justice and revenge, about how to rebuild relationships that had been damaged by betrayal on both sides. When I left, I felt lighter. Not happy. Exactly. But less burdened. As if admitting my own failures had freed me from carrying the weight of being purely right. That evening, I got an unexpected visitor at my apartment. Vanessa. She stood in the hallway, looking nervous. "I know I shouldn't be here. My lawyer said not to contact you. But I read your statement, and I had to say something." "What?" "Thank you. For admitting you went too far. For acknowledging that we both played parts in destroying this family. For being human about it." I let her into the apartment, and we sat awkwardly on my couch. "I'm still going to face criminal charges," she said. "Your statement doesn't change that. Nor should it. I know. But it helped. Knowing you're not just gleefully watching me burn. Knowing you recognize there were costs to your victory. It made me feel less alone in this. I'm not trying to minimize what you did, Vanessa. You committed crimes. You hurt me deliberately. You deserve consequences. I know. And I'll face them. I just wanted you to know that your statement, your willingness to be vulnerable about your own mistakes, it helped me see my own more clearly. It made me want to be better, even if it's too late to undo what I did. It's never too late to be better. Even if you can't undo the past. That's what my therapist says. I started seeing one. To figure out how I became the kind of person who'd bribe bank officers and sabotage family members. That's good. You should do that. She stood to leave. One more thing. I'm going to plead guilty. My lawyer says I should fight it, but I don't want to. You were right about what you said in your statement. How you win matters. I'm going to own what I did. Face it honestly. Stop trying to manipulate my way out of consequences. That's brave. No, it's just the right thing. Finally. She paused at the door. I hope someday we can be family again. Not soon. Maybe not for years. But someday. Maybe, I said. If we both do the work to become people who deserve that. After she left, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the journey I'd been on. From discovering Vanessa's betrayal to methodically destroying her to questioning the cost of that destruction to finally acknowledging my own role in how things had played out. It wasn't a clean story. Wasn't a simple tale of good versus evil or victim versus villain. It was messy and complicated and full of moral gray areas. But it was human. Real. Honest. And somehow, that felt more valuable than a clean victory would have been. The weeks that followed were strange. The media attention gradually faded as new scandals emerged to capture public interest. Vanessa's case moved through the legal system. She pleaded guilty as she'd promised and was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison with 3 years of supervised release. The bank's investigation concluded with 3 executives being fired and new protocols being implemented to prevent future corruption. Theodore Castellano personally oversaw the reforms, and true to his word, he publicly apologized for the institution's failure. My loan was approved with the generous terms he'd offered. I used it to expand my consulting business, hiring 3 new employees and moving into a proper office space. Business boomed, partly because of the publicity, but mostly because I was genuinely good at what I did. But the biggest changes were internal. I started therapy, something I'd resisted before, thinking I didn't need it. Dr. Phillips, a sharp woman in her 60s, helped me process everything that had happened. The betrayal. The revenge. The cost of winning. The guilt that had followed my victory. You're grieving, she told me during one session. Not just the relationship with your cousin, but the person you used to be. The softer, more trusting version of yourself. That's a real loss. Even if it was necessary for self-protection. So how do I move forward? Do I stay hard? Or try to be soft again? Neither. You learn discernment. You learn when trust is earned and when boundaries are needed. You learn that being kind doesn't mean being naive. And being strong doesn't mean being cruel. I worked on rebuilding relationships with my family. My mother and I had long conversations about expectations and disappointments and the ways we'd both failed each other. Anthony and I grew closer. He understood better than anyone what it felt like to be caught between loyalty to family and recognition of their flaws. My grandmother's health declined that spring. Nothing dramatic, just the slow fade of someone who'd lived a long life and was ready to rest. I visited her several times a week, and we talked about everything except Vanessa and the inheritance and all the drama that had consumed our family. Instead, we talked about my father. About her own life and regrets. About what mattered in the end. You know what I've learned? She said during one visit. Her voice weak but clear. The relationships you fight hardest to preserve are often the ones that need to end. And the ones you think are destroyed forever sometimes surprise you by healing. Which category does my relationship with Vanessa fall into? I don't know yet. Ask me in 5 years. She died peacefully in her sleep 3 months after Vanessa's sentencing. Her will, as promised, left the bulk of her estate to me, not because she loved Vanessa less, but because she believed I'd use it to build something meaningful. The money was substantial. Enough to expand my business dramatically, to invest in other ventures, to secure my future completely. It was everything Vanessa had been willing to commit crimes to obtain. But it felt heavy, burdened with the knowledge of what had been sacrificed for it. I used part of it to establish a scholarship fund in my father's name, for students from underprivileged backgrounds who wanted to study business or finance. I wanted his legacy to be about opportunity and integrity, not about the corruption that had tainted the bank he'd loved. I also used part of it to make an anonymous donation to a legal defense fund for white-collar criminals seeking rehabilitation rather than just punishment. It felt like a strange choice given what Vanessa had done to me, but Dr. Phillips had helped me understand that justice and mercy weren't opposites, they were partners. A year after the whole debacle began, I received a letter from Vanessa. She was 6 months into her prison sentence. Marcus, it read in her careful handwriting, "I'm not sure you want to hear from me, and I'll understand if you throw this away unread. But my therapist here, yes. They have therapy in prison, suggested I write to the people I've harmed and take genuine accountability. I've spent the past 6 months thinking about what I did and why. About the jealousy and greed that made me capable of sabotaging my own family. About the entitlement that made me think I deserved Grandma's inheritance more than you did. About the cruelty of laughing at your lone rejection while knowing I'd engineered it. I can't undo any of it. But I can own it completely. And I can tell you that your statement, the one where you admitted going too far in your revenge, probably saved my life. Not literally, but spiritually. Because it showed me that even righteous anger can become something toxic. That even justified revenge can cost your soul. That both of us had become people we didn't want to be. I'm trying to become better. Not to earn your forgiveness, I don't deserve that. And I'm not asking for it. But to honor the person Grandma believed I could be. To be worthy of the family I nearly destroyed. I heard about the scholarship fund you created in Uncle William's name. That's exactly the kind of thing he would have wanted. He was always more interested in helping people build futures than in accumulating wealth. I hope I can do something similar someday, when I get out. When I've rebuilt enough credibility to actually help people rather than just take from them. I don't know if we'll ever be family again. But I want you to know I'm grateful you exposed what I did. Not grateful for the consequences, those hurt deeply, but grateful you cared enough about truth and justice to stop me from continuing down that path. You saved me from myself, even though it destroyed us. Thank you. Vanessa. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer, uncertain what to do with it. Dr. Phillips asked me about it in our next session. How did the letter make you feel? Confused. Sad. Relieved, maybe? Like she's finally taking real responsibility instead of just performing remorse. Do you want to respond? I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me thinks responding would just reopen wounds that are finally starting to heal. What would you say if you did respond? I thought about it. That I'm glad she's getting help. That I hope she finds a way to be better. That maybe, in a few years, we can find some kind of peace with each other, even if we're never close again. That sounds honest. And kind without being weak. Is it forgiveness? What do you think forgiveness looks like? I don't know anymore. I used to think it meant forgetting what someone did and going back to how things were before. But that seems impossible. Naive. Even. Maybe forgiveness is just deciding not to let someone's worst actions define them forever. Maybe it's leaving room for people to change without requiring yourself to forget what they did. That resonated. I wrote back to Vanessa. Not a long letter, just a few paragraphs acknowledging receipt of her letter, expressing hope for her rehabilitation, and wishing her well in her journey toward becoming better. I didn't offer reconciliation or promise future relationship. But I also didn't close the door entirely. It felt like the right balance. Not too hard, not too soft. Just human. My business continued to thrive. I hired more staff, took on bigger clients, became known not just for the bank fraud case but for the quality of my work. People wanted to hire someone strategic and smart, but they also wanted someone with integrity. Someone who'd admitted mistakes. Someone who understood that winning at all costs wasn't really winning. I started dating again, something I'd put on hold during the whole revenge saga. Met someone named Skylar at a business conference. She was a project manager for a tech company, smart and funny and refreshingly uncomplicated. She knew about my history, everyone did, but she didn't treat me like a victim or a villain. Just like a person who'd been through something difficult and come out wiser. You know what I like about you? She said during our 3rd date. You're honest about being flawed. Most people pretend they've got it all figured out. You admit you don't. Is that attractive? Very. It means you're still growing. Still learning. Still open to being better. We took things slowly. And I was grateful for that. I needed to rebuild trust, not just in others, but in my own judgment. To remember that not everyone was out to sabotage me. That vulnerability wasn't always weakness. 2 years after the initial confrontation at my grandmother's Sunday dinner, I was invited to speak at a business ethics conference. They wanted me to talk about navigating corruption, about fighting back against institutional failure, about the costs and benefits of public accountability. I accepted. Though I was nervous about what to say. The night before the conference, I pulled out my father's letters again. Found one I'd overlooked before, a short note he'd written me when I was in high school, after I'd gotten into a fight with a bully. Marcus, it read, I'm proud you stood up for yourself. But remember, the goal isn't to become stronger than your bullies. It's to become better than them. Don't let their cruelty make you cruel. Don't let their meanness make you mean. Be the person you'd be proud to be, regardless of what they do. That's what I talked about at the conference. Not the mechanics of how I'd exposed Vanessa's fraud, though I covered that briefly, but the aftermath. The recognition that revenge, even justified revenge, had costs. The work of remaining human while pursuing justice. The challenge of being strong without being cruel. The question isn't whether you fight back, I told the audience of business professionals and ethics students. Sometimes you have to. The question is, who do you become while you're fighting? Do you become someone your best self would be proud of? Or do you let the fight turn you into someone you don't recognize? The speech was well received. But more importantly, it felt true. It felt like I'd finally integrated the lessons of the past 2 years into something coherent. Something I could live with. After the conference, I got an email from the attorney who'd handled Vanessa's case. She was up for early release, good behavior, genuine rehabilitation, participation in prison programs. Her parole hearing was in 3 months. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to provide a statement. Not supporting early release necessarily, but providing context about her crime and its impact. I thought about it for a week. Then I wrote a statement that was honest about the harm Vanessa had caused, but also acknowledged the genuine remorse she'd shown and the work she'd done to change. I didn't advocate for or against early release, I left that to the parole board. But I did say I believed in the possibility of rehabilitation. It felt like the right thing to do. Not for Vanessa, exactly, but for myself. For the person I wanted to be. She was granted early release, after serving 18 months of her 2-year sentence. I heard about it through my mother, who'd maintained contact with Vanessa throughout her incarceration. She's living in a halfway house, Mom told me. Working at a nonprofit that helps women re-entering society after prison. Says she wants to spend the rest of her life helping people avoid the mistakes she made. That's good. Are you going to see her? Not yet. Maybe someday. But not yet. She understands. She said she doesn't expect forgiveness. Just hopes you're doing well. Tell her I am. And I hope she is too. It wasn't closure exactly. More like an exhale. A release of the tension I'd been carrying for years. The recognition that both of us had done terrible things. Both of us had grown from them, and both of us deserved the chance to move forward. 3 years after my grandmother's Sunday dinner, I got married. Skylar and I had a small ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. No drama. No performances. Just people who genuinely cared about us, celebrating something real and good. My mother came. Anthony came. Even some of my extended family, the ones who'd watched the whole Vanessa situation unfold and taken sides, came to celebrate with me. The wounds had healed enough that we could be together without rehashing old conflicts. Vanessa didn't come. I didn't invite her, and she didn't expect an invitation. But she sent a card, a simple congratulations with a note that said, "I'm happy for you. You deserve good things." I kept the card. Not prominently displayed but tucked in a drawer with other mementos from that chapter of my life. A reminder of where I'd been. Of what I'd survived. Of who I'd been in danger of becoming and who I'd chosen to be instead. At the wedding, during my toast, I talked about my father. About the lessons he'd taught me. About integrity and character and the importance of remaining yourself even when circumstances try to change you. He used to tell me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when everything's going right, I said, raising my glass. It's what they do when everything's going wrong. Who they become when they're hurt. How they treat others when they have power over them. Those are the moments that define us. I looked around the room at the people who'd stood by me, through the betrayal, through the revenge. Through the reckoning with what that revenge had cost. I haven't always lived up to Dad's standard, I continued. I've made mistakes. Let anger guide me when wisdom should have. Prioritized winning over being kind. But I'm learning. Still learning. And I'm grateful for everyone here who's helped me learn those lessons. Skylar squeezed my hand. My mother wiped tears from her eyes. Anthony smiled, that knowing smile of someone who'd watched his older brother grow up the hard way. And I realized something, this was the real victory. Not destroying Vanessa. Not getting the loan or the money or the public vindication. But this, building a life worth living. Becoming a person worth being. Surrounding myself with people who saw my flaws and loved me anyway. That evening, after the reception, Skylar and I sat on the balcony of our hotel room, looking out at the city lights. "You seemed emotional during your toast," she said. "I was thinking about everything it took to get here. All the mistakes I made. All the ways I could have become someone I didn't want to be. But you didn't. You course-corrected. That's what matters." Did I though? Sometimes I wonder if the hardness is still there. If I just got better at hiding it. Marcus. She turned to face me. You're not hard. You're boundaried. There's a difference. You know your worth now. You know when to fight and when to walk away. That's not hardness. That's wisdom. I destroyed my cousin's life. You exposed her crimes. She destroyed her own life. You just refused to be destroyed with her. My grandmother said I went too far. Maybe you did. But you also admitted it. You took responsibility for the parts that were yours. You tried to be better. Not many people do that. She was right. And somewhere? I thought my father would be proud. Not of the revenge itself, but of the reflection that followed. Not of destroying Vanessa, but of recognizing the cost of doing so and choosing to be better. Not of winning at all costs, but of learning that how you win matters more than whether you win. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. Not because all wounds were healed, they weren't. But because I'd finally made peace with the person I'd become and the person I was still becoming. The bank CEO who knew my name personally had been right to be afraid. Not because I was vindictive, but because I was thorough. Strategic. Unwilling to be a victim. But he'd also been right to work with me rather than against me. Because I'd learned that the best victories aren't about destroying your enemies. They're about building something so solid, so genuine, so good that their attempts to destroy you only make you stronger. And I'd built that. Not perfectly. Not without mistakes. But authentically. My cousin had laughed at my lone rejection, thinking she'd won. But in the end, we'd both lost something, our innocence, our easy relationship. Our certainty that family meant unconditional support. And we both gained something too, understanding, growth. The hard-won wisdom that comes from making mistakes and choosing to learn from them. The headlines had told one story: bank CEO apologizes to fraud victim, justice served. Corruption exposed. But the real story was quieter, more personal, more complicated. Two people who'd hurt each other, a family fractured and slowly healing. And a man who'd learned that revenge might feel good in the moment but character felt better in the long run. And that lesson was worth more than any loan, any inheritance, any public vindication could ever be. 5 years after the Sunday dinner that changed everything, I received an unexpected phone call. Theodore Castellano. The bank CEO who'd personally apologized to me all those years ago, wanted to meet for lunch. Just catching up, he said when I answered. No agenda. Just curious how you're doing. I was curious too. Community First Bank had undergone massive reforms after the Patterson scandal. Castellano had survived, barely, but had used the crisis to completely restructure the institution. I'd heard good things. Stories of improved oversight, ethical lending practices, community investment programs. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown. Castellano looked older but somehow lighter, as if the years had worn off some burden he'd been carrying. Marcus, he said, shaking my hand warmly. You look well. Marriage agrees with you. It does. And you? How's the bank? Thriving. But different. Better. I think. He settled into his chair and ordered wine for both of us. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For forcing us to confront our corruption. For not accepting our first apology and demanding we actually change. For being, he searched for the word, relentless about making us better. I was protecting my own interests. You were. But in doing so, you protected a lot of other people too. We found 17 other cases where Patterson had manipulated loan decisions. 11 people who'd been wrongly rejected. 6 who'd been wrongly approved and were now drowning in debt they couldn't afford. Your case opened the door to fixing all of it. I didn't know that. We kept it quiet. Settled privately. Made things right without generating more negative publicity. But it happened. Because you refused to just take your approved loan and move on. Because you insisted we acknowledge what went wrong and fix it systemically. The wine arrived. We toasted to better outcomes through difficult lessons. Can I ask you something personal? Castellano said. Sure. Do you regret how you handled things with your cousin? I've followed your career. Read your interviews. I know you've been public about questioning your methods. I thought about it. I regret the hardness. The calculation. The satisfaction I felt watching her fall. But I don't regret exposing what she did. She committed crimes. She hurt people. Someone had to stop her. But it cost you something. I can see it. It did. It cost me a certain innocence. A belief that family meant automatic loyalty. A softness I'm not sure I'll ever fully recover. Was it worth it? Most days, yes. Some days, I'm not sure. But I made my choices and I've lived with them. That's all any of us can do. Castellano Nadi. I've spent 5 years asking myself similar questions. About how I let corruption flourish under my watch. About whether I could have caught Patterson sooner if I'd been paying attention. About the cost of caring more about the bank's reputation than about doing the right thing. And what did you conclude? That I can't change the past. But I can make sure the future is different. That every decision I make now is guided by the person I want to be, not the person I was. We talked for 2 hours, about ethics, about leadership, about the challenge of maintaining integrity in institutions designed for profit. About how easy it is to compromise a little, then a little more, until you don't recognize yourself anymore. Before we parted, Castellano handed me an envelope. What's this? A job offer. Position on our board of directors. We're restructuring our governance, adding people with lived experience of our failures. People who won't let us slide back into old patterns. I think you'd be perfect. I stared at the envelope. That's unexpected. You don't have to decide now. Take it home. Discuss it with your wife. But I hope you'll consider it. Not because we owe you, though we do. But because you're exactly the kind of voice we need to stay honest. I took the envelope. I'll think about it. That night, I told Skylar about the offer. What do you want to do? She asked. Part of me wants to say no. To keep my distance from the bank that caused me so much pain. To not risk getting pulled back into that world. And the other part? Thinks maybe this is an opportunity to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. To be the voice in the room saying, wait, is this ethical? To turn my worst experience into something that protects others. That sounds like something your father would do. She was right. It did. I accepted the position. Not for revenge or vindication, but because it felt like completing a circle. The bank that had wronged me was inviting me to help make sure it never wronged anyone else. That felt like justice in its purest form. Around the same time, I got another unexpected contact. Vanessa requested a meeting. Through my mother, not directly. She'd been out of prison for 3 years now, working steadily at the nonprofit, rebuilding her life piece by piece. She says she has something to tell you, Mom said. Something important. But she understands if you don't want to see her. I thought about it for days. Skylar and I talked through the pros and cons. Phillips asked what I hoped to gain from the meeting. Closure, I said. Real closure. Not the legal kind or the ethical kind, but the emotional kind. The kind where we both acknowledge what happened and figure out if there's any path forward. And if there isn't a path forward, then at least we tried. We met at a coffee shop, the same one where we'd met 3 years earlier. After her first arrest. She looked healthier now. More grounded. Less of the desperate energy that had defined her before. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this is asking a lot. What did you want to tell me? She pulled out a folder. I've been working with a financial literacy nonprofit for the past year. Teaching people who've made bad financial decisions how to rebuild. And I've been learning a lot about why people like me make the choices we do. Okay. I wanted to share something with you. Something I wrote as part of my therapy. About what I did and why. Not to make excuses, but to help you understand. If you want to understand. She handed me several pages. I read them there, in the coffee shop, while she sat nervously across from me. The document was a thorough analysis of her thought process during the months when she'd been sabotaging me. The jealousy that had started as a small seed and grown into something consuming. The rationalizations, you have so many advantages, I deserve this more. It's not really hurting him. The way each small compromise had led to bigger ones until she was bribing bank officers and didn't see anything wrong with it. But it also included something else, an inventory of the harm she'd caused. Not just to me, but to Patterson, to the bank, to our family, to herself. A clear-eyed accounting that didn't flinch from the damage. This is thorough, I said when I finished. My therapist says I needed to understand my own patterns before I could change them. So I did the work. Uncomfortable, painful work. And I wanted you to see it because, she hesitated. Because I wanted you to know this wasn't about you being inadequate. It was about me being broken in ways I didn't understand. I know that now. Took a while, but I know it. I also wanted to ask you something. A favor, though I have no right to ask anything. What? I'm writing a book. About financial crime from the inside. About how normal people end up doing criminal things. About rehabilitation and redemption. And I wanted your permission to tell our story. Honestly. Including your response. The revenge you took. The statement you made afterward. All of it. I was quiet for a long moment. Why? Because I think our story shows something important. That hurt people. That revenge, even justified revenge, has costs. That both victim and perpetrator can make mistakes. That healing is possible but complicated. I think people need to hear that. What would you say about me? The truth. That you were wronged terribly and responded in ways that were both understandable and problematic. That you exposed my crimes but also struggled with who you became in the process. That you're not a villain or a hero but a human being who made difficult choices in an impossible situation. And yourself? The same. That I'm not a villain or a victim but someone who made terrible choices and is trying to become better. I thought about my grandmother's words. About how some relationships surprised you by healing. I'll think about it, I said. Let me read a draft first. Make sure you're being fair to both of us. Of course. Thank you for even considering it. Before we parted, she said, can I tell you one more thing? Sure. The scholarship fund you set up in Uncle William's name? One of my ments received it. A young woman from a rough background, trying to build a career in finance. She told me about this scholarship that believed in second chances. In people who'd made mistakes but were trying to be better. And I realized that was you. Creating opportunities even for people who might have wronged you in the past. That was when I knew you'd really changed. That you'd kept your soul despite everything. My throat tightened. I almost didn't. The revenge almost consumed me. But it didn't. You pulled back from the edge. That takes more strength than people realize. Walking to my car after the meeting, I thought about how far we'd both come. From that Sunday dinner where she'd laughed at my failure to this coffee shop where we'd had an honest, painful, healing conversation. From the easy hatred of knowing I'd been wrong to the complicated grace of understanding we'd both been flawed. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. Not the fairy tale kind where everything was forgotten and forgiven. But it was something better, recognition. Understanding. The acknowledgement that we were both human beings who'd hurt each other and were trying to be better. That evening, Skylar asked how the meeting had gone. Better than expected. Harder than expected. Both at once. Are you going to let her write about you? I think so. After I see the draft. After I make sure she's not using it to excuse what she did or villainize what I did. But yeah. I think people might benefit from hearing the whole messy truth. That's brave. Or stupid. I'm not sure which yet. She kissed my forehead. Brave. Definitely brave. 6 months later, Vanessa sent me the manuscript. I read it over a weekend, with Skylar reading alongside me. Both of us processing the story of those years from Vanessa's perspective. It was fair. Brutally honest about her own actions. Critical but compassionate about mine. It didn't excuse either of us, but it also didn't demonize us. It just told the truth, complicated, messy, human truth. She's grown, Skylar said when we finished. Really grown. She has. So have I. Do you think you can be family again someday? Maybe. Not the way we were before, that's gone forever. But maybe something new. Something built on honesty instead of obligation. Something that acknowledges what happened but doesn't let it define us forever. I gave Vanessa permission to publish. With one condition, that a portion of the proceeds go to programs supporting both victims of financial fraud and people trying to rebuild after white-collar crime convictions. She agreed immediately. The book came out the following year. It generated some controversy, people who thought Vanessa shouldn't profit from her crimes. People who thought I shouldn't have cooperated with someone who'd wronged me. People who had opinions about every choice either of us had made. But it also generated conversations. Important conversations about justice and mercy, about revenge and forgiveness, about how hurt people become people who hurt others, and how that cycle might be broken. I did a few interviews to promote the book, not for Vanessa, but for the message. Skylar came with me to one taping. Sitting in the green room while I answered questions about those years. Do you regret what you did to your cousin? The interviewer asked. I regret some of how I did it, I said carefully. I regret the calculation. The coldness. The part of me that enjoyed watching her suffer. But I don't regret exposing her crimes or protecting myself. Those were necessary. Some people say you were vindictive. That you could have handled it privately. Some people have never been systematically sabotaged by someone they trusted. It's easy to judge from the outside. It's harder to know what you'd actually do in that situation. But you later said you went too far. I did. And I stand by that. I could have achieved justice without making sure her downfall was as public and devastating as possible. I could have been strong without being cruel. Those are lessons I learned too late, but at least I learned them. What would you tell someone going through something similar? Someone who's been betrayed and is considering revenge? I thought about that question carefully. I'd tell them that revenge might feel good in the moment, but character feels better in the long run. I'd tell them that exposing wrongdoing isn't the same as enjoying someone's suffering. I'd tell them to seek justice, but to watch themselves carefully while they're doing it. To make sure they don't become someone they don't recognize in pursuit of vindication. That's complicated advice. Because it's a complicated situation. Life isn't a movie where the good guys are purely good and the bad guys are purely bad. It's messy. And the best we can do is try to be better than we were yesterday. The interview aired and generated its own wave of responses. Some people agreed with me. Some thought I was still making excuses. Some shared their own stories of betrayal and revenge and the complicated aftermath. But the response that meant the most came from an unexpected source. My mother sent me a text after watching the interview. "Your father would be proud of who you've become. Not for the revenge, but for the reflection. Not for being perfect, but for trying to be better. I'm proud of you too. Love you, son." That night, Skylar and I had dinner with Anthony and his fiancée. We talked about everything except the book and the interview and the whole Vanessa situation. Just normal family conversation about work and wedding planning and whether we'd ever have kids. "You seem lighter," Anthony said at one point. "Less burdened. I feel lighter. Like I finally put down something I'd been carrying too long." The anger? The certainty that I was right. That's what was really heavy, being so sure I was the good guy in the story. Accepting that I was just complicated. Flawed. Human. That was liberating. You were wronged? Though. That part wasn't complicated. No. But my response was. And accepting that both things could be true, that's what freed me. 7 years after the Sunday dinner, Skylar got pregnant. We'd been trying for a while. And when the test came back positive, I felt something shift in my chest. A sense of the future opening up. Of new chapters beginning. "I want to raise this kid differently than we were raised," I told her, my hand on her still flat belly. "I want them to know they're loved without conditions. That they don't have to earn our approval or compete with family for affection. That they can make mistakes without being defined by them forever." "We'll mess up anyway," Skylar said. "All parents do. But at least we'll mess up intentionally. Trying to be better, instead of just repeating patterns. That's all we can ask." My mother was overjoyed about becoming a grandmother. Anthony was excited about being an uncle. Even my extended family, the ones who'd taken sides during the Vanessa situation, seemed ready to come together for this new beginning. And Vanessa, when she heard through my mother, sent a card. Just a simple congratulations with a note, "I'm happy for you both. Every child deserves parents who've learned from their mistakes. Yours is lucky." I kept that card too. Added it to the drawer with the others. Reminders of where I'd been and how far I'd come. The baby was born the following spring. A girl. We named her Julia. After Skylar's grandmother and no one from my side of the family. A fresh start. A name without baggage. Holding her for the first time. Looking at this tiny person who was part me and part Skylar and completely herself, I thought about legacy. About what I wanted to pass down. Not money. Though she'd have that. Not business acumen, though I'd teach her that too. But character. Integrity. The wisdom to know when to fight and when to walk away. The courage to admit mistakes. The grace to allow for growth, in herself and in others. "What are you thinking?" Skylar asked from the hospital bed. That I want to be the kind of father who teaches her to be strong without being cruel. Who shows her that standing up for yourself doesn't mean destroying others. Who helps her understand that the best revenge is living well. You'll be that kind of father. You've learned those lessons the hard way. Now you get to share them the easy way. But there was nothing easy about parenting, I discovered quickly. Julia was colicky and demanding and utterly dependent. She disrupted every routine, challenged every assumption, and made me realize how little I actually knew about being responsible for another human being. But she also brought joy I hadn't expected. The kind of pure, uncomplicated love I'd thought I'd lost the capacity for after everything with Vanessa. The kind that made me want to be better, not for reputation or revenge or any strategic reason, but just because this tiny person deserved a father who was whole. On Julia's first birthday, we had a small party. Both families came, my mother, Anthony and his now wife, Skylar's parents and siblings. Simple. Joyful. Uncomplicated by old dramas or unresolved conflicts. At one point, I found myself standing alone on our back deck, watching through the window as everyone sang happy birthday to Julia. My daughter, surrounded by people who loved her. My wife, glowing with happiness. My family, healed enough to celebrate together. And I thought, this is what victory actually looks like. Not my cousin in prison. Not my name in headlines. Not even the successful business or the bank position or the money I'd inherited. This moment of simple, genuine happiness. This feeling of being exactly who I wanted to be, living exactly the life I wanted to live. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Happy birthday to Julia. I hope your family has a beautiful celebration. Thank you for letting me move forward with my life even as you moved forward with yours. That was a gift I didn't deserve but am grateful for. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, thank you. I hope you're doing well. Truly. I deleted her number after sending it. Not out of anger, but out of completion. We'd both said what needed to be said. We'd both moved forward. We'd both become better than we'd been in our worst moments. And that was enough. Inside, someone called my name. Time to cut the cake. Time to celebrate this beautiful, complicated, hard-won life I'd built. I put the phone away and went inside to my family. To the people who'd loved me through everything. To the daughter who would grow up knowing a different kind of family than I'd known. To the wife who'd helped me believe I was still capable of kindness after everything that had happened. To the life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely worth every difficult lesson it had taken to get here. The bank CEO knew my name personally now. But not because of fraud or scandal. Because I'd joined their board and helped them become an institution my father would have been proud of. My cousin had laughed at my lone rejection, but the laughter had faded into something more complex. Understanding. Growth. Separate lives that no longer intersected except in memory and the occasional grace note of acknowledgement. The headlines had moved on to other stories. The public had forgotten about the cousins who destroyed each other and then slowly, painfully rebuilt. But I hadn't forgotten. I carried those lessons every day. In every decision. In every moment when I had to choose between strength and cruelty, between justice and revenge, between winning and being kind. And most days, not every day, but most, I chose well. That was the real victory. Not the money or the business or the vindication. But the man I'd become despite everything. The father I was learning to be. The husband I worked every day to deserve. The person who'd been broken and rebuilt and was somehow stronger in the broken places. My cousin had tried to destroy me. And for a while, I'd tried to destroy her back. But in the end, we'd both survived. Both grown. Both learned that revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but building something worth protecting felt better in the long run. And that lesson, that hard one, painful, complicated lesson, was worth every moment of the journey that had taught it to me. As I cut Julia's birthday cake, surrounded by family and laughter and love, I caught my reflection in the window. The man looking back at me wasn't the soft, trusting person I'd been before Vanessa's betrayal. But he wasn't the hard, calculating person I'd become during my revenge either. He was someone in between. Someone who'd learned when to be soft and when to be hard. When to trust and when to protect. When to fight and when to forgive. Someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so completely yourself. So genuinely happy, so thoroughly at peace that your enemy's attempts to destroy you become irrelevant. It's building a life so good that vindication becomes unnecessary. It's being the person you want to be regardless of what others do to you. That was my revenge. That was my justice. That was my peace. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.